Photogrammetry. 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 Photogrammetry.
You are bad at 3D modeling. You're also bad at sculpting, UV unwrapping, relationships, shading. Basically, if I asked you to make this thing from scratch, you'd come at me with something like this, which isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, it has decent edge flow, the UV unwrapping's pretty clean, and the material even looks fairly similar, but the point is we can do better. So rather than modeling everything by hand, imagine that instead we just took some photos from different angles or shot a single video, fed this data into some magic program, clicked the Make 3D Model button, and it spat out a highly detailed textured model. That would be pretty cool, right? Well, that doesn't actually exist. I'm just joshing with you, of course it exists. And this technique of using photos as data to generate a 3D model is called photogrammetry, and the video analog is called videogrammetry, and here's how it works. So you start off by taking a bunch of photos, which is going to be our data set, making sure to get good coverage, including close shots, wide shots, and hive shots, and we're going to look for spots of high contrast and call these our features. And during this phase of feature extraction, we're basically simplifying our images down to sets of points, which are then quickly compared to each other in feature matching so that we can find our camera's original position. So for example, consider these two photos with the three features they have in common, and imagine that each is independently forming a triangle using these features. And because they're independent from each other, they can really be positioned anywhere, but when we add the constraint that the triangle has to be the same, we can figure out their locations relative to each other. And we just keep repeating this process until we have all our cameras positioned along with having generated as far as point cloud. We now use our cameras to calculate a sequence of depth maps corresponding to distance away from the camera, which is then used to generate a dense point cloud. And really, you just take the resulting point cloud, triangulate it using one of these algorithms, do a bit of decimation, and project the images back onto our geometry. And everything we just talked about is how photogrammetry works, whereas videogrammetry is when you use the narration to promote your Patreon. So everything I just told you, all that complicated stuff, I want you to take it and throw it out. Instead, let me ask you a question. Do you have an iPhone? Or do you have an Android? Oh really, you do? Then you're pretty much ready to get started. First, you need to pick what you want to photo scan. For me, I just put a bunch of garbage on the floor and thought to myself, it's good enough. You're then going to want to download the Displayland app. By the way, this is the sponsor for the video, but it is free, fairly fast, and you're not going to have to use any notes. And then just open it up and hit this button, which is going to let us start our scan. And really, there's not much to it. You just slowly revolve around your model, making sure to get all angles of it, and the longer you do this, the more accurate your results will be, but also the longer it will take to process. And as you're scanning your model, you're going to notice some points are going to start popping up, which looks familiar to me for some reason, but generally this just means you're on the right track, so more dots means a better result. So when you've hit the minimum capture threshold, you can stop your scan, give this project a name, and upload it so it can begin processing. And while this happens in the background, enjoy this montage of scans other people made, which you can see because Displayland is also social media to share those 3D models that you scanned. So our model is done processing. So we can now go through the publishing process, which is going to let us share a download link of our model via email. And then after you download all the files to your computer and extract these somewhere, you can import your model into Blender by running the import obj command and navigating over to your file, and boom, you've imported your stuff into Blender. It's not that hard. Since you have your model in Blender, you can now do some cleanup if you want using sculpting, the smooth modifier. You can even go as